Good morning, Warzone kids, and welcome to Show and Tell Day out here on the Trail to the Western Lands. Thanks for coming by the channel of Pilgrim's Progress. I'm Ben Johnson, the Pilgrim in Residence, and we talk about healing and we talk about stuff like child sex abuse. I'm a survivor, complex PTSD, borderline, personality disorders, developmental PTSD, stuff like that. Before I can show you what I brung for show and tell, we got to talk about lemons and hot rods a little bit. When I was a kid, they used to have a thing called a lemon law. And a lemon is a car that if you buy it from the dealer, it's just no good. You get it home within a few days, it's just clear. Everything on this car is wrong. And when I was a kid in Oklahoma, I remember there was some kind of lemon law. And if you bought a car, you could take it back and swap it out within a few days. Well, they don't make those for psyches. If you come out of your childhood with a lemon of a psyche, there's no place you can call and just swap it out for a different one. That ain't really something that can happen. The cosmos has not issued a lemon law for damaged psyches. You got to do something else. I think I used to think about getting better, to call it that, before I would really use the word healing, as kind of a lot like fixing up a lemon. I'll give you an example of not quite a lemon in real life because I like my truck, but I got a used pickup truck a few years ago, a 2016 GMC Sierra 1500. And within a month after I got it, the transmission crapped out, burnt to a cinder. $5,000 later, I had a new transmission, and I kept my eye on the temperature of the transmission cooling fluid, little instrument you can look at on the dashboard. And it was always running real hot, like right on the edge of overheating. And I didn't like it because I thought, well, that's what cooked the last one. What's wrong with this thing? I looked it up, looked it up on YouTube, and I found a whole passel of people raising all kind of hell about this particular problem of this particular car. And it turns out that GMC put a thing called a transmission thermostat in there. And the job of that thermostat is to keep the temperature of the transmission fluid real high. And this is because if they do that, it will reduce the mileage by a little bit of a fraction of a mile an hour. So they do that, and at the same time as it's lowering or raising your miles per gallon, it's also slowly cooking your transmission, which I know is going to cost you $5,000 to replace. Now that reminded me a lot like me. If I let my psyche just run wild, it's going to be about a hair's breadth from burning me to a cinder. That's just a little thought came into my mind. Now, Daddy was a gifted mechanic. He's been a tank mechanic in Vietnam. And he'd had to find that out all on his own. And he was good at taking stuff apart and figuring out what was wrong with it, but it would never have entered his mind in a million years that somebody would put a device on a transmission to make it run hotter. That's just an idea it never would have occurred to him. And if he had found it by himself, I believe that he might have taken that thermostat out of that transmission, put it in a sock, and gone and found that engineer that come up with that idea at GM, and beat him to death with that transmission thermostat in a sock. And I wouldn't blame him for it because, man, was I hot. But I live in the era of YouTube, and so I can just go and look on YouTube and find hundreds of people complaining about that. There again, I thought about my psyche. Daddy grew up in an era where there weren't no YouTube for busted psyches. He had to figure it out on his own. But I do have people I can look for help. And so I guess in a way these videos are me putting my little version of a transmission thermostat fix-it video up there on YouTube. Because what I found is all those guys complaining about that transmission, well, they also had various ways to work around it, defeat it, take it out, and otherwise get around it. And so that's what I did. Because what I did not want to do was return that truck with that transmission thermostat back to its factory conditions, because its factory conditions were dumb and busted. They were lemon. That thing was designed to come a lemon out of the factory. And the last thing I wanted to do was get it back in tip-top factory shape. So I got rid of that thermostat. I used one of the tips I found to get rid of that thing. It is no longer in there, and it is no longer doing its job of keeping that transmission fluid hot, because I don't want it to do that job anymore. I thought about, well, there's plenty of parts of me that had their job to do. Everything that I did to get out of my childhood did a job for me at that time. But a lot of those things don't really help me now as a grown man living in the world. A lot of them are a lot more like that transmission thermostat. They did their job. They got that miles per gallon up to where they wanted it. Now it just burns up transmission. Don't want that. So I don't want my truck back in its original factory conditions. I want a truck that works right. I want a truck that does what it's supposed to do. And that made me think about hot rods. And it helped me change a lot of the ways I think about myself and healing and getting better. Folks that grew up how I did will know that a hot rod starts off in life as a street car. It's a regular old car. And some folks get together and they get that car in their garage and they start taking it apart. They take it apart down to the nuts and bolts. And then they rebuild it, but better. And they fix things that were wrong with that car. And they make them better than they were in the first place. And that's a hot rod. Hot rods are never done. They're never perfect. They're just always getting better. You don't start thinking about taking that apart all at once. That's too intimidating. Just one piece at a time, and it ain't going to cost you a dime. And with every little piece of that lemon that you take off of there, you learn a little bit more about what your hot rod is going to be like. And now we come to the show and tell part, because I know exactly what my hot rod is going to be like. It's this car right here. A 1978 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am edition. Look at them headlights. Look at them T-tops. There's no Sally Field in there. Too bad. This is the car from Smokey and the Bandit. Now, that's a movie that came out in the late 70s, and this car was by far the hottest American car around where I grew up in that era. I love this thing. And for those of you that don't know, Smokey and the Bandit was a wild movie. It was a lot of fun. Jackie Gleason was in there, Sally Field, Burt Reynolds, Jerry Reed. And Smokey and the Bandit was about a fella driving this car called a Bandit. And he had a job to do. He had a run to make. He had to drive all the way to Texarkana, Texas, and pick up a load of Coors beer and drive it back to Atlanta, Georgia, all in less than 24 hours. Now, these cars were the hottest car in the United States, hottest American car in the United States when I was a kid. But if anybody wanted to be honest about it, they would tell you that right out of the factory, this car, with it, even with the bird, even with the screaming chicken on the front, and even with those headlights that I love so much, this car was kind of a lemon out of the shop. It was a kind of middle-ish sedan engine and transmission with a kind of a cool-looking body slapped on it. But it was underpowered. The suspension was loose and sloppy. You couldn't keep a thing on the road. The transmission was underpowered. Just not a great car. It was a lemon. This car, out of the shop, weren't never going to pick up thousands of cases of Coors beer and get it from Texarkana to Atlanta in 24 hours. Never going to happen. In order for this car to do its job, the one job it existed in the world for, it had to get torn down and rebuilt to make this Trans Am a Trans Am. Because what came out of the factory weren't no legit Pontiac Firebird Trans Am. It just kind of looked like it, but the guts weren't there. They had to put the guts in the thing and get it to run like it could have run. They put a more powerful engine in it, put a racing transmission in it, stiffened up that transmission, made this car all it could be. But the fact is, whatever you do to this car, it's still always going to be a 1978 Pontiac Trans Am Firebird. It's always going to have engine in the front, rear wheel drive. It's always going to have MT tops on it. That's the kind of car it is. No matter what you do to this car, you can't make it a Porsche with little slopey hood and a nice engine mounted right in the middle so the weight's all evenly distributed. No, this thing's always going to be a Pontiac Trans Am Firebird. Just like me. I'm always going to be a 1974 Ben Johnson. I'm a guy who's a child sex abuse survivor, A lot of psychological, emotional harm caused in my youth. My attachment mechanism, the way I relate with other people. Woo! Captain Chaos. But that's from a Cannonball Run, not Smokey and the Bandit. You'll have to go watch that movie on your own time. Captain Chaos, Dom DeLuise. I'm a guy who spent years waging war against his feelings, trying very hard to be like Spock, and I can say very successfully, learning, training myself not to show any emotions that I don't want to show best I can. And as a result, I was a grown man who for years couldn't cry. You had to make something like a dead pet to get me to cry, or where the red fern grows, or something real sentimental like that. So I'm super prone to being overly sentimental in my writing, too much pathos, or rather lots of pathos. Seems just right to me. But that's just how I roll. That's me, highly prone to histrionics. Struggle against grandiosity and narcissism as the night follows the day. And I am utterly okay with each and every one of those struggles, mortifying as they might be, difficult as they might be, because I know one thing about cars good and well, and I don't even like working on cars really, but I know one thing is you cannot take a car apart unless you can see what's there. Lucky for me, I spent a long time under cars holding flashlights real still. Because Daddy was a combat tank mechanic, and his tolerance for working on cars in inclement conditions into all hours of the dead of night is amazing, astounding. And so I can hold that flashlight for a long, long time, right where it needs to be, so you can take that thing apart. And I realized that as a pilgrim on the trail to the Western lands in search of myself for quite a long time now, feels to me, I have learned to hold the flashlight still while I look at myself. And I've learned that it's important for me to see what's really there. And there's no one on God's green earth that wants to find out, wow, my narcissism score is really high. It's really hard for me to see out of my own head and to see the audience out there that I'm talking to right now. Ooh. Grandiosity, to recognize that you go through the earth with one of your highest priorities being to show how you're better somehow, because inside you kind of know you're nothing. But still, to everyone around you, you're just grandiose. Oof. None of these things are light and comfortable. They're not easy. But if you can hold your flashlight on them and see them, then you can figure out how to take them apart. But first, you've got to accept that that's what's there. You have to break them bolts loose and get it apart. Just how it does. No other way to do it. I'm going to let the lyrics from the closing theme to Smokey and the Bandit do my talking for me. It's a song sung by Jerry Reed, a very great and a very goofy guy. And him and his Basset Hound Flash were the kind of second leads in the film. But this song stirs the heart of this Gen X pilgrim. Westbound and down, 18 wheels are rolling. We're going to do what they say can't be done. We got a long way to go and a short time to get there. I'm westbound, just watch that old pilgrim run. Keep your foot hard on that pedal, boy, and never mind them brakes. Let it all hang out, 'cause we got a run to make.